the shadowed corridors of the Black Library, where the forbidden knowledge of the Eldar was stored, a lone scholar named Ileana delved into the secrets of the warp. She sought to unravel the mysteries of Tzeentch, the architect of fate, whose ever-shifting schemes manipulated the very fabric of reality in the grim darkness of the 41st millennium. Ileana, driven by an insatiable thirst for forbidden lore, studied ancient tomes that whispered of Tzeentch's intricate designs. The pages crackled with eldritch energy as she deciphered the cryptic passages, her mind a vessel for the warp's unpredictable currents. As her obsession deepened, Ileana's dreams became a labyrinth of twisting corridors and kaleidoscopic visions. Tzeentch's whispers echoed through her mind, promising insights into the threads of fate that wove through the tapestry of the universe. The more Ileana sought understanding, the more the warp's influence seeped into her consciousness. In her waking hours, Ileana's eyes gleamed with an otherworldly fervor. She began to see glimpses of the future, visions that danced at the periphery of her perception. The warp's energy flowed through her, a chaotic force that elevated her senses to heights beyond mortal comprehension. In the city of Vortalis Secundus, Ileana's newfound abilities drew the attention of an inquisitor named Octavian Draco. Intrigued by the warp-touched scholar, he saw an opportunity to wield her talents against the enemies of the Imperium. Unbeknownst to Draco, Tzeentch's unseen hand guided the strings of fate, orchestrating a symphony of manipulation. Ileana, recruited by Inquisitor Draco, became a pawn in a game played by forces beyond mortal comprehension. Together, they uncovered heretical cults and unraveled the plans of traitorous warlords. Ileana's visions guided the Inquisitor's actions, ensuring victories that defied the odds. But with each success, Ileana's connection to the warp deepened. The visions, once glimpses of the future, now revealed the tangled web of fate manipulated by Tzeentch. The architect of fate reveled in the chaos sown by Ileana's unwitting actions, his laughter echoing through the warp. As the Inquisitor's victories mounted, Ileana's mind became a battleground. Tzeentch's whispers, once subtle guidance, now urged her to subvert the Imperium from within. The warp's insidious influence contorted her perceptions, and the line between ally and adversary blurred. In a moment of lucidity, Ileana confronted the Inquisitor, revealing the warp's machinations that had ensnared them both. But Draco, convinced of his righteous cause, dismissed her warnings as the ramblings of a deluded psyker. Tzeentch's laughter, a discordant melody in the warp, accompanied Ileana's futile pleas. The Inquisitor's pursuit of heresy led them to the planet Arcanus Prime, where a clandestine cult plotted the resurrection of a long-dormant demon. Ileana's visions, clouded by the warp's whims, foretold the impending catastrophe. As they infiltrated the cult's hidden sanctum, the air became charged with an unnatural energy. In the heart of the ritual chamber, the cultists chanted forbidden incantations. Tzeentch's presence loomed, an unseen orchestrator guiding the ritual toward a culmination of warp-infused chaos. Ileana, caught between her loyalty to the Imperium and the warp's seductive whispers, grappled with a choice that could tip the scales of fate. As the demon's form materialized, a grotesque amalgamation of warp-spawned horror, Ileana's mind fractured. The warp's influence surged, twisting her perceptions and shattering the barriers that held Tzeentch at bay. In a moment of revelation, she understood the true extent of the architect of fate's machinations. Tzeentch reveled in the chaos unleashed by the demon's emergence. The city of Arcanus Prime convulsed in the grip of warp energies, reality warping and twisting. Inquisitor Draco, blinded by his pursuit of heresy, confronted the demon with unwavering determination. But Tzeentch, amused by the unfolding drama, had other plans. Ileana, torn between loyalty and the warp's influence, witnessed the climactic battle. In a surge of psychic energy, the demon's form shifted and contorted. The warp's whims manipulated the very fabric of its existence, rendering the Inquisitor's attacks futile. Tzeentch's laughter, a cacophony of deranged glee, echoed through the twisted corridors of reality. In a final act of defiance, Ilyana unleashed her latent psychic potential. The warp, a tempest of chaotic energy, responded to her call. Reality itself bowed to her will as she channeled the warp's unpredictable currents. The demon, caught in the warp's capricious dance, disintegrated into tendrils of energy that spiraled into the immaterial realm. As the warp's grip on Arcanus Prime loosened, the city began to stabilize. Inquisitor Draco, battered and broken, surveyed the aftermath. Ilyana, her mind scarred by the warp's touch, stood at the precipice of damnation and redemption. The warp's whispers, once seductive promises of power, faded into a distant murmur. Tzeentch, amused by the unfolding drama, retreated into the enigmatic depths of the warp. Ilyana, her connection to the warp forever altered, bore witness to the consequences of meddling with the fickle forces of fate. In the war-torn aftermath, Inquisitor Draco, oblivious to the warp's machinations, praised Ilyana for her role in averting the catastrophe. Unbeknownst to him, the architect of fate continued to weave his intricate designs, for in the grim darkness of the 41st Millennium, Tzeentch's influence lingered, an ever-present shadow manipulating the threads of destiny. The warp swallowed us whole, a maelstrom of swirling energies that twisted reality itself. My name is Sergeant Arian Voss, and I led my squad of Space Marines into the heart of the void. We were on a mission, assigned by the Adeptus Astartes, to investigate a disturbance in the warp that threatened to spill its corruption into real space. Our drop pod hurtled through the fractured barriers of reality, and when we emerged, we found ourselves in a realm that defied all logic. The colors were alien, the geometry impossible, and the very air seemed to hum with an unsettling vibration. We were lost in the warp, a place where sanity goes to die. The squad moved in tight formation, bolters at the ready. The objective was simple: find the source of the disturbance and eliminate it. But as we ventured deeper into the shifting labyrinth of the warp, a creeping unease settled over us. Whispers echoed in the recesses of our helmets, voices that spoke of forgotten nightmares and ancient horrors. The first sign that something was amiss came when Brother Garen, our heavy weapons specialist, began to mutter incoherently. His eyes darted around as if following unseen specters, and his fingers twitched on the trigger of his heavy bolter. I ordered him to pull himself together, but the warp had already sunk its claws into his mind. As we pressed on, the very fabric of reality seemed to warp and twist around us. The corridor we traversed elongated and contracted, playing tricks on our perceptions. Shadows danced in the corners of our vision, and the air grew thick with a palpable malevolence. We were no longer in control of our destiny. The warp held us in its suffocating grip. Brother Garen's mutterings grew louder, more deranged. He spoke of demons and forbidden knowledge, his words a mad litany that echoed through the squad's Vox channels. I could feel the unease spreading like a contagion among my brothers, a creeping sense of dread that threatened to tear apart the bonds of brotherhood that held us together. As we reached a cavernous chamber, the source of the disturbance revealed itself. An ancient, corrupted artifact, pulsating with warp energies. The air shimmered around it, and the whispers grew into agonized screams. Brother Garen fell to his knees, his hands clutching his helmet as if trying to block out the voices that assailed him. I ordered the squad to destroy the artifact, to purge it with holy fire, but as we raised our weapons, the warp retaliated. Nightmarish entities materialized from the shifting shadows, their forms ever-changing and grotesque. The squad opened fire, bolter rounds tearing through the warp-spawned abominations, but with each one we killed, another took its place. In the chaos of battle, Brother Garen tore off his helmet, revealing eyes that glowed with an unholy light. His once proud face contorted into a rictus of madness as he uttered dark incantations in a language not meant for mortal tongues. The warp had claimed him, body and soul. The squad fought valiantly, but the warp was a relentless adversary. Reality itself seemed to fray at the edges, and I could feel the warp seeping into my mind, whispering forbidden truths that threatened to unravel the very essence of my being. I fought to maintain my sanity, to resist the lure of the warp's seductive promises. One by one, my brothers fell. Their screams echoed in the twisted corridors, swallowed by the madness of the warp. I stood alone, surrounded by the remnants of a squad that had descended into the abyss. The artifact still pulsed with corrupted energy, a beacon of the warp's malevolence. In a final act of desperate defiance, I unleashed the full firepower of my bolter upon the artifact. The chamber shook, and a blinding light enveloped everything. When the brilliance faded, I found myself back in real space, the warp's tendrils releasing their grip on my soul. I stood amidst the ruins of my squad, the stench of burnt ozone and the acrid taste of failure in the air. The artifact was destroyed, but at a terrible cost. I, Sergeant Arian Voss, was the lone survivor, condemned to carry the memories of my squad's descent into madness. As I made my way back to the extraction point, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had followed me out of the warp. The whispers lingered, a haunting chorus of the damned that echoed in the recesses of my mind. The line between reality and nightmare had blurred, and I, a space marine of the Imperium, had become a reluctant witness to the true horror that lurked within the warp. The darkness enveloped the desolate planet like a shroud, and the air was permeated with a gloomy and corrosive atmosphere. My name is Inquisitor Theron Valius, and my task was to investigate signs of corruption within the highest echelons of Imperial power. In the 41st Millennium, the Imperium was in constant struggle against the darkness, but this mission turned out to be a nightmare beyond imagination. Planet Exidius Prime was a ruin, a place that had seen better days before the war, and heresy reduced it to a womb of rubble. Accompanied by a team of inquisitorial adepts, I ventured into the bowels of a city long forgotten, where ancient buildings seemed to weep the lament of the dead. My investigation targeted the dominant political faction, a cabal that conducted dealings in the shadows and enriched itself on the suffering of its citizens. But as the thirst for knowledge often leads to horror, I soon discovered that heresy had roots deeper than I had imagined. My team and I found ourselves in an ancient palace, once the heart of Exidius Prime's political power. The walls were covered with paintings depicting stories of glorious heroes, now faded like the hopes of this beleaguered city. As I examined an ancient archive, I uncovered a forbidden document, a secret treaty with the forces of chaos. Betrayal unfolded before my eyes. The city's leaders had struck a dark pact, surrendering the soul of their people in exchange for power and prosperity. A sense of disgust overwhelmed me, but my mission required that I press on, even if it meant confronting the horror I had uncovered. In the shadows, my team and I found a secret passage leading to an underground crypt. Here, in the pulsating heart of heresy, lay an altar stained with blood and surrounded by chaos symbols. The truth was clear. The city was a cradle of corruption, and betrayal lurked among the highest echelons. As we explored the crypt, smoking candles illuminated a circle of pyres, revealing hooded figures whispering ancient mantras. They were the city's leaders, traitors shrouded in the darkness of chaos. At that moment, the room's temperature dropped, and I saw the figures undulating in the air, possessed by dark entities. The battle that ensued was a macabre dance between the Inquisition and the servants of chaos. The city's leaders, once respectable, were now deformed inhabitants of a perverse realm. Flames danced among the shadows as blades clashed with forbidden powers. The growing chaos, fueled by betrayal, threatened to devour all that remained of Exidius Prime. During the fight, I felt the call of chaos attempting to insinuate itself into my mind. Visions of boundless power and forbidden knowledge appeared before me, but I forcefully rejected the temptation. My determination was unyielding, even as betrayal and heresy sucked me in. Suddenly, the air filled with a howling roar, and the floor trembled beneath my boots. A chaos creature, summoned by ritualistic heresy, materialized in the circle of pyres. Its appearance was a mosaic of twisted tentacles and eyes burning with infernal light. The battle reached its climax, but the horror of the creature proved insurmountable. As my adepts fell one after another, I felt the grip of chaos tighten around me. The creature emitted a dissonant scream, and the world around us warped, revealing a distorted and chaotic dimension. I found myself in a place beyond comprehension, surrounded by alien figures and desperate screams. Chaos had opened a rift in reality, and I was trapped in this distorted limbo. I observed my reflection in a shattered mirror, and my face was distorted, deformed by the corruption I had tried to fight. I snapped back to reality. The crypt was in ruins, the flames of the altar dying. The chaos creature had vanished, but the price of betrayal had been paid with the blood of the innocent. The city of Exidius Prime lay in darkness, condemned by its greed and corruption. And so, as my team and I left the desolate planet, I knew that my battle against chaos did not end there. Betrayal was a plague that insinuated itself into the darkest hearts of the Imperium, and my Inquisition mission would continue to seek and destroy heresy, even if it meant facing the horrors of the growing chaos in the 41st Millennium. In the desolate expanse of the Jericho Reach, where the veil between reality and the immaterium grew thin, a remote Imperial outpost named Kalis V stood as a lone bastion against the encroaching darkness. The winds carried the whispers of demons, and the shadows seemed to dance with unseen malevolence. Kalis V, a forgotten realm in the vastness of the Jericho Reach, harbored a secret that would unleash unspeakable horror. Sergeant Gideon Kell, a grizzled veteran of the Imperial Guard, commanded the outpost's defense. The isolation of Kalis V had driven many to madness, and the occasional warp storms that swept through the region only intensified the sense of foreboding. Kell, however, stood resolute, his faith in the Emperor unwavering. As the outpost's voxcaster crackled to life, a distorted message echoed through the corridors. The voice, guttural and filled with an otherworldly resonance, spoke of a prophecy foretelling the awakening of a demon that slumbered beneath Kalis V. The message sent shivers down the spines of the outpost's defenders, and uneasy glances were exchanged among the guardsmen. Determined to maintain order, Sergeant Kell dismissed the message as a ploy by the forces of chaos to sow discord. However, the uneasy atmosphere persisted, and the soldiers patrolled the outpost with twitchy trigger fingers. Nightfall brought with it a palpable tension, and the flickering lights seemed to cast elongated shadows that whispered of ancient horrors. In the dead of night, as the moon hung low in the sky, a series of unearthly screams echoed from the depths below Kalis V. The outpost, now on high alert, descended into chaos as panic spread among the guardsmen. Kell, his grim expression etched in determination, ordered a squad to investigate the source of the unearthly cries. The squad descended into the labyrinthine catacombs that riddled the foundations of Kalis V. The air became thick with an otherworldly miasma, and the dim glow of laser guns did little to dispel the encroaching darkness. As they ventured deeper, the walls seemed to pulse with an ancient malevolence. In the heart of the catacombs, the squad discovered a chamber adorned with heretical symbols and sigils. In the center lay an ancient seal, bound by chains and tainted with the warp's foul energies. The air itself seemed to writhe with unseen forces, and the squad felt the oppressive weight of malevolent eyes upon them. The unearthly screams intensified, reverberating through the chamber. Suddenly, the ancient seal shattered, and a shadowy figure emerged, a demon, its form a swirling mass of darkness and ethereal flames. The squad, paralyzed by fear, watched in horror as the demon spoke in a language that clawed at the very fabric of their sanity. With a wave of its incorporeal hand, the demon unleashed a torrent of warp energy that consumed the guardsmen. Their agonized screams echoed through the catacombs as their physical forms twisted and contorted, consumed by the demon's malevolent power. The chamber, now a nexus of unholy energy, pulsed with an otherworldly light. Sergeant Kell, alerted by the anguished cries, led a desperate counter-assault into the catacombs. The demon, aware of the intrusion, turned its malevolent gaze towards the approaching guardsmen. Kell, his faith unbroken, bellowed prayers to the Emperor as he charged forward, his chainsword roaring to life. The battle that ensued was a nightmarish dance between the mortal and the demon. Last fire and chainsword strikes clashed with ethereal flames and shadowy tendrils. The catacombs became a battleground where the boundaries between reality and the immaterium blurred. As Kell's chainsword cleaved through the demon's form, a surge of warp energy engulfed him. Visions of demonic realms and tortured souls assaulted his senses, and the demon's laughter echoed through his mind. In a desperate act of defiance, Kell's faith burned like a beacon in the warp's desolation. With a roar, Kell drove his chainsword through the demon's incorporeal heart. The catacombs convulsed with an explosion of warp energy, and the demon's form dissipated into a maelstrom of shadow and flame. The chamber, now a desolate husk, echoed with the fading cries of the demonic incursion. Kalis V, scarred by the horror that unfolded in its depths, descended into a somber silence. The surviving guardsmen, their faces etched with the trauma of the demonic encounter, gathered in solemn reflection. Sergeant Kell, his armor battered and his spirit unbroken, surveyed the aftermath. The Voxcaster crackled once more, but this time the voice that emerged was not of demonic origin. It was the steady voice of an Inquisitor, a servant of the Holy Ordos, who had been monitoring the situation. The Inquisitor commended Sergeant Kell for his unwavering faith and resilience in the face of demonic incursion. Kalis V, now a symbol of the Imperium's triumph over the forces of chaos, stood as a testament to the indomitable spirit of the Emperor's servants. Sergeant Kell, his soul scarred by the horrors of the Jericho Reach, vowed to remain vigilant, for the demonic forces that lurked in the shadows of the 41st Millennium were ever watchful, and the war against the darkness was an unending battle in the grim expanse of the Warhammer 40,000 universe. In the war-torn city of Hive Anathrax, where the shadows seemed to writhe with unseen terrors, a group of Psykers treaded the razor's edge between sanity and damnation. Their powers, harnessed from the warp, had become both a blessing and a curse, for in the grim darkness of the 41st Millennium, the line between psychic mastery and the malevolent forces of the warp were perilously thin. Inquisitor Seraphina Draken, a stern enforcer of the Imperial Creed, led the Psykers under her watchful eye. Tasked with harnessing their psychic potential to combat the encroaching darkness, the Psykers delved into the warp's secrets, seeking forbidden knowledge to turn the tide of war in favor of the Imperium. As the Psykers delved deeper into the warp's mysteries, the city's atmosphere thickened with an unnatural aura. Whispers like tendrils of darkness slithered through the minds of the Psykers. The warp beckoned, promising untold power, but at a price only the damned were willing to pay. Among the Psykers was Maliki, a young and ambitious adept with a talent for telepathy. His mind, once a vessel of untapped potential, became a battleground for the warp's insidious influence. Late at night, Maliki's dreams were haunted by visions of forbidden realms, where demonic entities danced on the precipice of reality. Driven by a thirst for power, Maliki secretly delved into the tomes of the Forbidden Library, seeking incantations that would amplify his psychic abilities. The warp, ever hungry for souls, seized upon his vulnerability, whispering secrets that promised dominion over minds and the unraveling of the fabric of reality. As Maliki's powers grew, so too did the darkness that clung to his soul. Shadows whispered macabre truths, and the once bright corridors of his mind became twisted labyrinths where reality and nightmare intertwined. Draken, sensing the growing malevolence, confronted Maliki, her eyes stern and unwavering. "Your path teeters on the brink, Maliki. The warp's seduction will devour your soul if you do not master its whispers," warned Draken, her inquisitorial authority cutting through the psychic miasma. But Maliki, intoxicated by the warp's promises, dismissed her counsel. He believed himself invincible, a conduit for the very essence of the warp. His telepathic abilities grew exponentially, allowing him to pluck thoughts from the minds of the enemy and manipulate the battlefield with a mere thought. Yet, with every triumph, the warp's grip on Maliki tightened. He became a vessel for the warp's capricious whims, his mind a tumultuous sea of conflicting emotions and nightmarish visions. The line between reality and delusion blurred, and the city itself seemed to contort in response to his fractured psyche. One fateful night, as the city lay shrouded in darkness, a rift in the fabric of reality tore open. From the warp's depths emerged a host of demonic entities, drawn by the beacon of power emanating from Maliki's tortured soul. The city, once a bastion of imperial strength, became a battleground between the Imperium's forces and the malevolent warp spawn. Draken, recognizing the gravity of the situation, marshaled the Psykers to confront the demonic incursion. Maliki, now a pawn of the warp's whims, stood at the forefront, his eyes ablaze with eldritch light. The Psykers, their powers augmented by the very force they sought to control, engaged in a psychic duel against the demonic entities. The warp's whispers crescendoed into a maddening cacophony as the battle unfolded. Reality itself seemed to buckle and warp under the strain of psychic warfare. Demonic horrors clashed with psychic barriers, and the cityscape itself twisted into grotesque forms in response to the psychic maelstrom. Draken, wielding her psychic abilities, confronted Maliki amidst the chaos. "You are lost, Maliki. The warp's promises are but illusions, and your soul is forfeit," she declared, her voice cutting through the psychic tumult. But Maliki, consumed by the warp's malevolence, retorted with a surge of psychic energy that sent Draken reeling. The city, caught in the crossfire of the warp spawn and Psykers, became a nightmarish tableau of destruction. As the battle reached its zenith, Maliki's psychic powers reached a fever pitch. Reality itself fractured, and a colossal warp rift tore open above the city. The demonic entities poured forth in an unending tide, the very fabric of the Imperium unraveling in their wake. In a final act of desperation, Draken channeled the collective psychic might of the remaining Psykers. With a surge of raw power, they closed the warp rift, banishing the demonic entities back to the immaterial realm. The city, scarred by the psychic cataclysm, lay in ruins. Maliki, his mind shattered and his body a vessel for the warp's torment, crumpled to the ground. Draken, her gaze heavy with the weight of the Imperium's sacrifices, approached the fallen Psyker. The once ambitious adept now lay broken, his psychic potential consumed by the very force he had sought to master. As dawn broke over the devastated city of Hive Anathrax, the survivors surveyed the wreckage. The warp's whispers had subsided, leaving behind a city haunted by the specter of its descent into madness. Draken, her inquisitorial gaze unyielding, contemplated the cost of harnessing the warp's power in the name of the Imperium. The Psykers, scattered and scarred, reflected on the price of their psychic abilities. The warp's whispers, once promise of unimaginable power, had exacted a toll measured in the lives lost and the fractured minds left in their wake. In the grim darkness of the 41st millennium, the line between savior and heretic, between Psyker and vessel, remained a treacherous path walked only by those willing to pay the price of power.